So just working in a convenience store or a retail store by yourself, regardless of what sex you are, can potentially expose you to deadly violence. It doesn't happen often. It really doesn't. But it does happen, and that alone is scary. It's the stuff of nightmares. And that's what the I-70 killer was. He was the stuff of nightmares. A stranger who drifted in from out of the blue, killed for no good reason, and then disappeared right back into the void. So we're starting on the morning of April 8th, 1992, when Robin Fuldauer found herself working her shift at Payless Shoe Store all alone. It was shortly after her lunch break ended at around 1 o'clock. A man entered the store and forced Robin into the back room where he murdered her and then fled the crime scene. The first indicator to anyone outside the store that something was wrong was when the district manager of Payless called to check in with Robin, but the phone just kept ringing. Just as the police showed, a customer entered the store and began browsing up and down the aisles, unaware that the store's sole on-duty employee lay dead in the back room. At first, when they found her body, police weren't sure if Robin had been struck on the head or shot. But the medical examiner was able to resolve that and conclude that she'd been shot twice in the head with a .22 caliber firearm. In terms of motive for the murder, it looked like it may have just been robbery. The cash register drawer was open and $100 was missing. But little did anyone know yet, this was just the beginning of a multi-state murder spree. Just 3 days later, in Wichita, Kansas, nearly 700 miles away, a man named Norman Smith was at home worrying about his wife, Patricia. She worked as a bridal consultant at a shop called La Bride d'Elegance. And Norman had last heard from her over 2 hours earlier when she called to tell him she'd be late getting home because she had just had a last-minute customer. He called the store several times since then, and there was no answer. So he got into his car and drove down to the shop. And when he got there, his heart leapt into his throat. There were police cars and cops everywhere. There were television news vans, crime scene tape blocking off the entrance to the shop where his wife worked. He talked to the police, who drove him to St. Joseph's Medical Center, and when he arrived, he learned that his wife had just been pronounced dead. She had been shot to death while working, and so had her boss, Trish Majors. Both women were found face down on the floor in the back of the store, each with a single gunshot wound to the back of their head. It appeared that robbery may have been a motive, though the amount that was missing from the store was relatively trivial, just like in Indianapolis. Investigators reached the conclusion that the two women probably assumed the gunman was a customer they were waiting for, and that's why they unlocked the door to even let him in. And by the end of the month, investigators were beginning to consider a possible link between the Payless Shoe Source murder of Robin Fuldauer and the two slayings in Wichita. The same caliber of weapon had been used, and the circumstances were very similar. By May 9th, 1 month after Robin was killed, 4 additional killings were linked to what was now appeared to be the work of a serial killer. On April 27th, 40-year-old Michael McCowan had been working in his mother's ceramics store in Terre Haute, Indiana, when someone entered the store in the late afternoon, crept up behind McCowan while he was stocking shelves, and shot him in the head before taking the victim's wallet and leaving, ignoring money in the register. Then on May 3rd, in St. Charles, Missouri, some customers entered a footwear and Western-style clothing shop called Boot Village and found the store's 24-year-old saleswoman Nancy Kitzmiller shot in the back of the head and dead on the floor. Nancy had not originally been scheduled to come in that day, but she agreed to work when a coworker needed the day off. And again, a modest amount of money was missing from the cash register, an amount that didn't really square with the cost of a human life. No one heard the gunshot when it rang out, but there was one witness who saw Nancy with a man who appeared to be a customer within minutes of her murder. This witness assisted police in creating another composite sketch. 4 days later, on May 7th in Raytown, Missouri, Tim Hickman, owner of the Video Attic video store, heard a loud pop in the gift shop next door, which was called Store of Many Colors. He moved closer to his front window and watched as a man whom he'd just seen enter moments earlier walked back out and through the parking lot. He went next door to see what had happened, what the noise was. And that's when he found Sarah Blessing, the 37-year-old owner of the store, shot down dead in the middle of the day. A clerk at a grocery store in the same plaza had also seen this man after the murder climbing a hill heading in the direction of I-70. And that was a common thread linking all of the cases beyond just the MO. All of these crimes occurred along the I-70 corridor from Indianapolis all the way to Wichita. That's a distance of 675 miles, about 10 hours of travel time. The first murder took place in Indianapolis at the easternmost point of the series, and the second murder just 3 days later occurred at the westernmost point in Wichita. So the killer had traveled that distance at some point during this 3-day period, and then over the next month, bounced back and forth from state to state. This is probably why it was so easy to make the connection that all of these murders happening in the middle of the day to employees at workplaces were connected. But investigators weren't sure what this meant. Sure, the killer may have been a trucker or someone who traveled for work, but it's just as possible that he was driving great distances to complicate the investigation, which would help prevent him from getting caught. And if so, it worked, because as of March 2023, we still have no idea who the I-70 killer is. All these crimes were linked by ballistics. It's for sure that the same gun was used in each of them. There is actually an offer of a $25,000 reward for information leading to the killer's identification.